I'm going to take a little time to talk about this report. We have a number of invitees to the webinar, specifically state and regional biosolids experts. So some of them may find this, they may already know it, but some people may not know about this report. And this is a report filed annually. It's done in accordance with EPA's federal biosolids regulations in 40 CFR 503. It applies to basically sewage treatment plants, but also other facilities that are designated as Class 1 sludge management facilities. Unlike most NPDES programs, EPA runs this program for most states. 42 of the 50 states, EPA runs the federal biosolids program, and EPA does so for all tribes and territories. And our best estimate is that in these 42 states and tribes and territories, there are about 4,500 filers of this annual report. All of these reports are processed and managed by one EPA region out of Kansas City, Kansas, EPA Region 7. They are designated as EPA's Biosolids Center of Excellence, and they ensure compliance with Part 503. In particular, they are looking for weaknesses that might exist in how biosolids are managed. For example, failure to meet pollutant limits in biosolids, if the POTW is not monitoring the biosolids at the required frequency, if there's failure to report, or if there are any failures to meet the pathogen reduction or vector attraction reduction methods. These are all things that Region 7 looks for. And if you recall John's introductory slides, right now Region 7 is essentially swamped with all of these paper reports, and they are very excited, very, very excited to move to electronic reporting to make this review and processing of the data more efficient. It is an annual report, and it's due for 2017 no later than February 21st. And again, this is where EPA runs the federal biosolids program. Let's talk a little bit about how we developed the form, the Biosolids Annual Report form. We start with the work that we did during the rulemaking. We worked over 5 years with 25 states via technical work group. That came up with a list of data elements, and these data elements are provided in the appendix to the rule, Appendix A of 40 CFR Part 127. That's the NPDES electronic reporting rule. And then to add greater clarity on exactly what these data elements are going to cover, and the rules and the reference values, we held a biweekly technical work group with states and regions. We had good participation, and we went through all of the requirements for this annual report. And then we did testing as well. We tried to simplify the report as much as possible. And in that simplification, we'll note that this electronic report is likely different than previous paper reports, and that's okay. What we're trying to do is collect the information in a standardized way, in a nationally consistent way, and to collect the information in a way that we can make better use of it. So again, the information that we're going to show you on the form is derived from our biosolids regulations, and we had significant input from states and regions in developing this form. A quick note is that the draft biosolids form allows POTWs to report on one or more biosolids management methods. So let's say a POTW is doing land application as well as surface disposal. They'll be able to report both. And if they do land application in slightly different ways, they'll be able to track that. And the way they track that is through what we call a sewage sludge unique identifier. So if they're managing biosolids with land application, that might be identifier number 1, and then we would track the data for that set of biosolids. And if there's another management method, let's say incineration, we would track that separately. And this will become clearer when we show you the form. We made the form smart so that it only shows options that are available. So for example, Class A pathogen reduction options are only available for Class A biosolids. We also heard from our states that for some POTWs that send their biosolids off-site, they may not know all of the information for the report. So we've allowed for the biosolids reporters to let us know when they send their biosolids off-site to, let's say, an aggregator, to identify the name of that aggregator so that if there's an issue, we could follow up. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to my colleague, Eleanor, and we're going to give a quick demo of the Biosolids annual report.
All right, thank you, Carrie. So here I went ahead and preloaded this report. Really, to get to this point, someone would log in to CDX, and they would have to create an account, obviously. But this is our basic draft that we currently have in test. It's already changing, but this should help give you a good idea of what the overall format will be. So I'm going to select New Biosolids Report, and then I would have already set up which specific facilities I would be reporting for. So I'll pick Banner, Village of here, and it would load in the data from ISIS. So the first question is basically, why are you reporting this? If I said, so it's things like you have a design flow rate equal to or greater than 1 million gallons per day, all the potential reasons you would be required to report. If I said none of the above, that actually means I'm saying I'm not required to report this. So you can still voluntarily report. However, we do remind you that you don't have to do this, and we are going to show your data if you do. So, switching over, the next question is basically about what sort of treatment processes your facility does. We got a comment in the last round to more clearly organize this. So this isn't the appearance it will have in the end. It will be broken apart by physical treatment, but I will choose underground injection. Next, for various parameters like enteric viruses, fecal coliform, I'm asked to say how specifically which analytical methods I use. For all of these, there's another option, but if you check it, then you need to describe. And what is the total volume? And so each time there's a required field, it's basically showing me it's required by not allowing me to proceed until I answer it. As Carrie mentioned, for each SSUID, sewage sludge identifier, I'm going to have to pick a method, such as land application. I can either conduct this method myself or send it off-site. So I'll select owner or operator. Maybe I do composting. Whether it's in bulk or bag makes a difference for what you're required to report and what pathogen class. And then I'll say that I have the same amount of volume as I listed up above. Do I have one or more pollutants that exceed the concentration? If I say yes here, then it's going to ask me, is it 90%? Pathogen reduction, you need to be doing some form of pathogen reduction and vector attraction reduction. And do you have any deficiencies to report? If I say yes here, I get a list of land application deficiencies to check off. And I am also expected to provide some explanation. So here there's the final chance to add any comments about what is up above.
I'm going to click add another.
Oh, okay, yes. So I can add another, as Carrie said, and this one could be surface disposal instead. And just a note, actually there is a section we are adding here. I'll show you in a second on the slide. And then if this were a real report set up, I would need to send it to a certifier, who's the person who's authorized to actually sign and submit this, but it's not live yet. All right. So switching back. Oh, there. All right, some additional notes on this. It'll be available starting December 21st, which is 1 year from the rule publication. I give you the link to CDX that these filers will be using. If they already have a NetDMR account, it's going to be helpful if they use the same user ID and email address, because eventually we'll be merging those accounts. So we are actually going to be, for most of these filers, assigning new NIPD's IDs, and we're going to reach out to them to tell them what those IDs are. They will need to request access to the NIPD's ID within NET, and that's how that drop-down of the NIPD's ID knew what to show me. And then EPA will share a list of likely Part 503 filers. So for the 2016 report, EPA will also collect pollutant concentration data directly on the NET form, and that's because the NetDMR account won't be shared yet. And so our current plan is to use NetDMR to collect pollutant concentration data for the 2017 Biosolids annual report. So for the one due February 2017, it would be directly on the form, and then starting in 2018, they'd actually be going through NetDMR. So this is just a screenshot. I mentioned that there would be a new section. This is a screenshot of our mock-up of what that section will look like. So they simply, they would only see the parameters they were required to report for, and they would be entering an equals or greater than or less than. And if they have no data, then that would be an end in this little drop-down.
Great, thank you, Eleanor. Now Jason's going to talk about some of the outreach and support we'll be giving reporters. Take it away.
Thanks, Carrie. So I saw some folks ask this question in the chat box about outreach that will be conducted. And as Eleanor mentioned, we have developed and are actually in the process of enhancing the list of expected biosolids generators. So we're going to be using that list with the contact information that we've gotten, that we have in ISIS NIPD's, in addition to any other information like email addresses and mailing addresses that we've added to that list that we've received from Biosolids coordinators within the regions and states. And so from that list, we're developing our outreach approach. We're going to start with a postcard and email communication out to these folks And in that postcard and email communication, we will include the new NIPTES ID so that when they access the system, they have the information needed to request the ID, the access to that specific ID. That we're hoping to get that communication out to the biosolids generators in mid-November, so in the next couple of weeks. We will certainly inform our partners in the states and regions before we do any outreach to let them know that it's happening. You know, and then we'll also, you know, we'll be prepared for any uptick in assistance requests that might come in through our help desk. And then we're also in the process of developing a brochure that we will make available on our website that people can download and, again, just use as a reference when they are in conversation with permittees or biosolids generators. And we hope to have that brochure published by the end of November. In terms of training, we will have webinar trainings. They will, you know, use PowerPoints as well as live demos. They're tentatively scheduled to begin the second week of December, and I say tentative because the system is still being developed. But I'm pretty confident that the second week in December, we will be able to launch our webinar sessions. And typically we start with a train-the-trainer type session so that, you know, the states and regions can, you know, then provide their own trainings when requested. And then we'll follow that up with training specifically for the biosolids generators themselves. We have a goal of training 4,500 biosolids generators, and so we're sort of wrestling with exactly how to accommodate all of those, whether or not we have to provide a lot of training sessions to accommodate fewer people or fewer training sessions that can accommodate more people. So that's why I refer to the schedule as tentative. We're also developing video tutorials similar to the NetDMR training that will complement the webinar trainings. And the video tutorials will focus on how to create an account in CDX, which would then allow you to access NET, and then also how to file the Biosolids annual report. And these video tutorials, our goal is to have them available by December 21st. And we're also developing a detailed user's guide for how to complete the annual report. I know that we've received some requests from biosolids generators that are really looking for, you know, the fields that they're going to be required to report and a very detailed, clear description of what's expected or intended in those fields. And so we want to be able to accommodate them. So our plan is to take a crack at developing a draft user's guide and then circulating that to the biosolids coordinators and the biosolids experts to help us, you know, with real-world examples and really to make that user's guide as useful as possible for these biosolids generators so that when they're going through the form, they know clearly what the expectations are. And again, we hope to have that available by December 21st. So 12/21 is our goal for all of this information so that when the tool itself becomes available, they have the materials needed to help them utilize the tool. All right.
Great. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
So as I noted earlier, we are excited that this is transitioning from paper to electronic, Region 7 more so than we are. And we feel that in part the NPDES program has been very, very strong because it's had the DMR. It's been an effective tool of assessing compliance. More people are using electronic reporting. And we're hoping to utilize that same approach here for the Biosolids annual report, making the data nationally consistent, more readily usable so that we can provide good oversight.